The New Orleans Saints need Taliese Fuaga to continue his dominance on the offensive line, not just for 2025, but for the sake of their future. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, the New Orleans Saints have announced their training camp dates to let you know which ones are going to be open. Spoiler alert, it's almost all of them here in Louisiana. We'll also take a look at the New Orleans Saints tight end room, which has some talent but could potentially use more. The big question is whether or not they're going to be able to find it. And to kick everything off today, we're taking a look at starting right tackle Taliese Fuaga, who started off with an incredible rookie season, and the Saints desperately need him to continue that dominance on the offensive line, not just for the sake of 2025, but beyond as well. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making it your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. New Orleans Saints first round pick from 2024, Taliese Fuaga, was phenomenal as their starting left tackle all throughout the 2024 season, all throughout his rookie season, playing a position that he didn't even play before in his time. He'd always been a right tackle, particularly with his few years over at Oregon State. Made the switch over to left tackle, took it all in stride, and became one of very few players, along with Trevor Penning, who moved from left tackle to right tackle, to play all 17 games last season and to play nearly 100% of the snaps on offense. Fuaga was outstanding. He allowed 6 sacks over the course of the season, but 5 of them came in 3 games. That included a 3-game sack up against the Denver Broncos in Week 7. A week before that against Tampa, he allowed, or 3-sack game against the Denver Broncos in Week 7. A week before that, he allowed 1 against Tampa. A week later, he allowed 1 against the Los Angeles Chargers. Did not allow another sack until Week 17 up against the Las Vegas Raiders. He had a fantastic season. He was excellent. He was one of the highest graded tackles, rookie offensive lineman last year as well. And the Saints are going to need him to continue that as he moves back now to his inherent position, right? The position that he played in college at Oregon State at right tackle, while rookie Kelvin Banks Jr. plugs in at left tackle, the top 10 selection and rookie from this year's draft. But the Saints need Taliese Fuaga not just to perform again in 2025 for the sake of 2025, but because if he and Kelvin Banks end up panning out on either side of that offensive line, left tackle and right tackle, then all of a sudden, the conversation is very different for them moving forward throughout their rebuild as they continue to try different things out here in 2025, but then potentially flip their roster more going into 2026, 2027, and beyond. New regime, new coaching staff, a lot of players returning, but there's always the opportunity that you're going to see players end up departing, and then you'll need to be able to manage that attrition. And one way to manage that attrition is to have money to spend. And one way to have money to spend is to have some of your most important positions locked down by players that are already extended or that are still on rookie contracts. And the Saints are entering their best financial health in a really, really long time. And a guy like Taliese Fuaga panning out over at right tackle would be a major win for this team, congruent to all of the other players that they have that are going to be stepping into major roles that have either already been extended and are already on extended contracts, or that are operating in that cost effectiveness of a rookie contract. So here's what I mean. If Fuaga and Banks work out, right tackle, left tackle, respectively, the Saints get 2 of the most important positions on their team, those tackles, and in particular, the blindside tackle with Kelvin Banks Jr., but in either case, those tackles on rookie contracts for the foreseeable future for the next at least 4 years. You get 4 years of Kelvin Banks on his rookie deal. You get 4 years of Fuaga on a rookie deal, plus his, I would expect already at this point, we'll find out how the next couple of years go, but 5th-year option, that would be a part of that as well. You also have potential quarterback on a rookie contract in either Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shough, or perhaps a quarterback going into next year's draft. You have Chase Young, who's already been extended and is operating on that 3-year, $17 million per year deal. And you have the opportunity now to extend Alontae Taylor potentially before the season begins. And you know that you've got some other extensions that you need to work out. But outside of that, the Saints' big money moves could be going towards adding talent to this team in the short window following their 1 or 2 years of rebuilding that they'll undergo here in 2025, as well as in 2026. Then they'll have to revisit all the different things and figure out how it is that they're going to make the money work. By then, the salary cap's over $300 million probably at that point. And so they will have their opportunities to get all of those things figured out. But in the short term, if this is a team that wants to find its way to being competitive again and a playoff team again and finding its way to contention over the course of the next 4 years or so, Kelvin Banks Jr., Taliese Fuaga, those guys panning out are going to be a major and massive part of their ability to be able to build that contender, which you can build through the draft and then supplement by spending money in free agency. And the Saints have not really truly been able to go out there and spend money in free agency like you would like to see them do when it comes to building these contenders here over the course of the past few years, dealing with the restructured contracts, the big drop in salary cap following the COVID year, having to deal with, you got veterans that are on, fully guaranteed deals or not fully, but like massively guaranteed deals, majority guaranteed deals, things like that, guarantees that have come from some of those restructures. That's going to be shedding over the course of the next few years. And so when you get players at tackle, when you get a player at quarterback, when you have somebody that's locked down when it comes to edge rusher, when you have young wide receivers, when you have, good defensive playmakers, a potential starting corner, number one corner in Kool-Aid McKinstry also on a rookie contract. We'll see how things go for Jonas Sanker and his development, how he fits in, Quincy Riley, how he fits in, Danny Stutzman, how he fits in. You have this opportunity now ahead of you that if some of these young guys all pan out, you have a team that's young and that is not costing you a lot of money, which then allows you to be able to funnel resources into going out and grabbing those additional star-studded pieces that can come in and help take your team to the next level. So that's a big reason why I think that Taliese Fuaga following up without seeing that sophomore slump in 2025 would be a humongous opportunity and a good step forward for New Orleans. And I have no doubts that he'll do that, if I'm being completely honest. He was outstanding in his transition from college to the pros, even though he was playing, technically speaking, out of position, moving from right tackle to left tackle. Now he returns to the position that he's most familiar with at right tackle. No matter what, you're facing very talented edge rushers who move around and rush from one side of the line, one snap, rush from another side of the line, another snap. You're already going to be facing premier edge rusher talent no matter where it is that you're lining up in today's NFL. It's just the truth. And now you get this opportunity to bookend him with a guy on a first-round rookie contract, a top 10 pick in Kelvin Banks Jr., just a year after Fuaga was drafted at 14th overall. And by the way, you also get a chance now to take another first-round pick in Trevor Penning, move him into left guard, and if he pans out there, that is a far more manageable contract extension to go down the road on more sooner than you'll have to go down the road on those two tackle contracts. So also very good situation there for New Orleans as well to maintain a little bit of that cost effectiveness. The other reason simply that I believe that Taliese Fuaga is incredibly important and vital to the Saints' future and success in that future moving forward is because of the fact that he's going to protect your most valuable asset in terms of your quarterback. And so not seeing him take steps back would be a good sign in terms of being able to build trust for that young quarterback. And of course, what he's also able to do for your run game as a tenacious run blocker. We could sit here and talk about the sacks that he allowed, the pressures that he allowed, all these other things, but he was also phenomenal in the run game as a relentless blocker and matched up with and got the better of some of the best edge rusher talent in the NFL. So for Fuaga being able to pan out here going into his second year back at right tackle, massive for the New Orleans Saints. All right, coming up next, we'll take a look at the New Orleans Saints tight end room, who many feel still needs to be shored up. But the issue is that there's not a lot of options out there, which means that if the Saints want that position group to take a step forward, the guys in the room are going to have to do it. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money, the absolute best app that I probably have on my phone because of all of the help that it gives me when it comes to not just managing my finances, but building my wealth as well. One app allowing you to be able to maintain things like budgeting, accounts, spending, investments, and more. Look, one of the things that I found out was that I'm spending way too much money on having food delivered. And that was a bit of a thing that was going on during the season. It's a busy time, all that. So now when I'm at home a little bit more, I can go ahead and budget more appropriately when it comes to my food spending, helping me to save up money for some trips coming up for next year's road trips and everything. So it's awesome. I absolutely love Monarch Money. You will too. Go and check it out. Take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, and that is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, family, if the New Orleans Saints want to continue to build up their tight end room, they're going to have to do it with the players that are already in the building, because no one's saving them in June when it comes to free agency. The New Orleans Saints tight end room, I think, is more talented than people give it credit for. I just don't think that it was taken advantage of properly by the coaching staffs in the past. Play calling, game planning, all these other pieces. I think very much that this tight end room is going to surprise some people going into 2025 and beyond. I think a lot of that has to do with the talent that's already there, but I also think that a lot of it has to do with the way that guys like Kellen Moore and TJ Paganetti are going to utilize these tight ends, not just in the passing game for Kellen Moore, but the way they're going to be schemed into the run game for TJ Paganetti. And of course, I don't mean them running the ball, but I mean their efficiencies and their productivity and their help and aid in creating a better run game in 2025. I think that all of this is kind of on the way for New Orleans, and I think that the tight end room, led by Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau, are going to be the ones that are going to be a big part of what the Saints are able to do successfully for that room, of course. But I do think that if the Saints want to shore that room up, they're going to need some of the guys towards the back half of that room to really start to stand forward. So I think typically when we talk about the Saints tight end room, people assume that there are three locks for the roster: Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, as well as Taysom Hill. Now, of course, there's the injury question with both Moreau and Hill, to where we're not sure yet when they're going to be ready. It does seem that it has been indicated that Foster Moreau will be ready faster than Taysom Hill, but we'll see where things go, right? Training camp will be the actual proving ground for that. But Taysom Hill had a significant lower leg injury in December. There's a good chance that he potentially starts. My estimation is that there's a good chance that he starts on PUP. Anything faster than that is not impossible, but certainly would be surprising. It would be a pleasant surprise, I'm sure, for a lot of folks. Foster Moreau also had a lower leg injury the final game of the season, but he's been on the sideline a lot more. We've seen Taysom Hill the one day. We've seen Foster Moreau literally every day of OTAs and mandatory minicamp that we were present. And Kellen Moore seemed to indicate that Moreau was a little bit further along. Then he is willing to kind of have discussions around Taysom Hill's timeline. So we'll see where things go there. But I do think that there is a fourth player that is a lock for the roster for me, assuming that he stays healthy. And that's Jack Stoll, who came over from Philadelphia last year, the tight end that is brings an elite level of physicality, but also is maybe a little bit of an underrated athlete in that way, but ran a 4.6, has some violent run after catch ability, has some good athleticism, does some good route running as well. So maybe does a little bit more than I think that people realize because of the role that he served in that Philadelphia Eagles offense, a lot of which he would do in this New Orleans Saints offense as well, particularly bringing some more physicality to that run game. So I think that those four guys are really the top players when it comes to the position group. It's just that two of them, you kind of have to ask the question, when is the big thing, right? But Juwan Johnson's at the top of that position group. He got the extension this offseason. Kellen Moore seems so excited for what he's going to be able to do on the field. Juwan Johnson seems so excited for what Kellen Moore is going to ask him to do on the field. So I would expect Juwan Johnson to be a little bit more of an impact player earlier than he has typically gotten put into the fold or brought into the fold in the past couple of years, when he was typically brought in a little bit late. So with all of that considered, the next questions become, how many tight ends will the New Orleans Saints keep? And who ends up taking those other roster spots? Because I talk to a lot of fans when I'm walking around the city and stuff like that. I walk a lot. And so I can be found walking around quite often, and we talk and everything. And sometimes the tight end room is kind of one of those places where when I ask people what they think the biggest needs are for the team, they'll typically say something along the lines of wide receiver and tight end. And the wide receiver room is a big one because of size is usually what the conversation is there. But I don't think the Saints are actually particularly worried about that. And then the other one that always comes up is tight end. And I think typically it's because fans have understandably been a little bit underwhelmed with what I will say is the usage of the tight ends more than it is the actual talent of the tight ends that are in the room. It's just that they haven't really gotten involved until much later. We broke this down on previous episodes and things like that. But the core idea being that they've been more a part of the offensive line early, and then it's as if partway through the season, the previous play callers have gone like, oh, wait, they can catch. And then they kind of figure out a way to get them started and involved in the tight end room. That is my assessment and my assessment only. So where that can change happens with the usage and the deployment of those tight ends and responsibilities that they're given starting in week 1, as opposed to later on when the wide receivers have dealt with injury. And then all of a sudden, in the past, they've had to turn to the tight ends to help out in the passing game instead of in the run game, so on and so forth. So if the Saints do want to find, but here's the thing about that, about finding help for that position group when people kind of see it as a need, is that ain't nobody out there. Ain't nobody out there that's going to help you at this point in June. The remaining free agents that include guys like Gerald Everett and Mercedes Lewis, who are either 40 or late, pushing into the later 30s. Jordan Atkins, Michael Pruitt, CJ Uzama. These are all guys that are beyond their opportunity to be immediate impact players. Hayden Hurst, so on and so forth. There's not a lot of these players that are out there on the market at this point, particularly free agents, that you can just go out there, have them put pen to paper, have them show up in New Orleans, and then you'll be able to do that. That's evidenced actually by the Saints having signed Seth Green from the UFL as opposed to signing an NFL free agent, because the NFL free agent stock doesn't offer much promise right now. So if the Saints are going to want to see, if the Saints feel similarly, that they need to see another player, added to this position group or whatever, or what have you, they'll need to find it from the players that are currently in the position group's room. And so let's look at those players. 3 players are ones that Saints fans are familiar with and that have been around. Dallin Holker, who was an undrafted free agent rookie last year. Same thing for Trayton Welsh, but Trayton Welsh joined a little bit late coming out of Wyoming. And then you also saw Michael Jacobson, who has been with the team since 2022, 2023, 2024. Yeah, I think that's right. And so he's been around for a little while and has been somebody that has been a staple, a mainstay on the team's practice squad. And so for all of that, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, I think this is his third. So I think he joined at 23 when it comes to Michael Jacobson. My apologies. And so you're hoping that one of those guys steps into a larger role and cracks the 53. The newcomers, along with Seth Green, is Moliki Matavao, who was drafted in the 7th round. Matavao being a guy that during his early days at Oregon was mostly utilized as a blocker. And then after he transferred to UCLA, 6'6", 260 pounds, they finally said, we should throw him the football. And then all of a sudden he made some nice plays, being this really good pass catcher and route runner as well. And so the Saints have some talent down there, but I think instead of going to the free agent market, which does not offer much promise, the Saints are going to need to see if a 4th or 5th tight end really stands out from the guys that are already inside the building. Dallin Holker certainly has the versatility, the athleticism, all those other pieces. Trayton Welsh absolutely has the athleticism and is a really, really fundamentally sound player. Michael Jacobson has gone out there and flashed constantly throughout training camps. Can he finally turn that into consistent enough play to earn him a spot on the 53? We'll find out. So I think that if the Saints are going to want to shore up that tight end room the same way that some fans, most fans, a lot of fans feel that they need to, they're going to have to do it with one of the young guns in their room. That's the way that they're going to have to go about it. And then, of course, figure out when Taysom Hill is going to be able to get back out on the field. All right, coming up next, we're wrapping up the show, taking a look at the New Orleans Saints training camp schedule, which has been announced. And I'll tell you the number of training camps, almost all of them, that will be open to the public while here in Louisiana. We got the coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints have announced their training camp schedule. And as a part of announcing their training camp schedule, have also announced 9 open practices for fans. And let me tell you, that's the majority of practices that will be open to you. And that's an exciting proposal. Because look, this is a return to New Orleans for training camp, right? They did their entire training camp out in Irvine, California last year while they were renovating the cafeteria and other parts of the New Orleans Saints training facility out in Metairie. The Saints will now return to Metairie for their first 11 practices of training camp. Then they will take their training camp back to UC Irvine, Zot. They will take the training camp back there for another 5 or so practices, basically beginning like right before the Chargers game on August, which is on August 10th, and then stay there for a little bit before they come back before the next preseason game. So I wanted to go over the dates that the Saints will be practicing, the dates that are open to you, which is where we're going to start because I think that's what's most important to you. And we'll also take a look at what's going on for the Saints over in Irvine as well. So the Saints announced 9 open dates. That is 9 out of 11 open dates that is 9 open dates out of 11 total practices that the Saints will hold at the training facility in Metairie. So that is all but 2 practices that will be open. So you will get to see, if you're able to grab tickets and everything like that, which you were able to begin to reserve on kind of a sliding scale this morning from 9 a.m. I think it's season ticket holders at 9 a.m. on the first, 9:30 a.m. for those on the wait list, and then general public at 10 a.m. So go and get those tickets if you haven't already. If you're hearing this and it's before that, go and check it out. If you're watching this and it's after that, go ahead and grab them if they're still available and get your tickets. The Saints will have open practices July 23, 24, 25, 27, 28, and 30. So it's 5 in the last couple weeks of July. And then they'll have August 2, 3, and 5 will be their final open dates of training camp. On August 6th, they will head to Irvine. I will be out there. I'll be covering those practices out in Irvine, California for you, bringing you everything just like we did last year. So Saints opening up 9 practices is great. And look, I don't know if this is a Kellen Moore thing, but I'm going to kind of give Kellen Moore a little bit of a pat on the back here because this feels like a Kellen Moore thing. Kellen Moore was open and honest about practices and training camp not just returning to New Orleans. This was all the way back April 1st when we were in Palm Beach for the annual meetings. And he was open and immediately honest about the team having and bringing practices back to Metairie this year. But he also was open and honest about the fact that they will likely take camp to the West Coast for a little while. Some of that is to build camaraderie. Well, actually, I'll explain that in a moment. But some of that's to avoid the heat and stuff like that. But I think there's more important team bonding, team building stuff that's connected with that. Then, as the team wrapped up, after canceling the last day of minicamp so they could all go to 504, which was awesome, they ended up, or rather, Kellen Moore ended up making it very clear the dates that they were heading to Irvine, that they would basically be there from the 6th through the 15th. And they will be holding practices from the 7th through the 14th. And that's what we learned more in depth on Monday, but we already knew that range of dates thanks to Kellen Moore earlier this offseason. And now finally, they've opened 9 of the 11 practices during this period while they are in Metairie. None of the practices in California are going to be open. That is not a surprising thing. The logistics, all this other stuff. I'm just saying, I know my alma mater. The logistics are not easy. And the logistics are not, I'm just gonna leave it at that. The logistics are not easy. That's all I'm gonna say. And so I think that when I look at where the Saints are, when it comes to the openness that they have been able to expend around training camp, the fact that they have opened training camp and even opened the 2 days of minicamp that they didn't cancel, right? 2 days of minicamp were open. The 1 day that wasn't open to minicamp, they did cancel. Shocker. That this all very much feels like Kellen Moore and the New Orleans Saints making a concerted effort to get themselves reconnected to their fan base. And I think that that is a good thing. I think that's a good stretch. I think that's a good piece. I think that's a good measure by this team. And it has to start with Kellen Moore. Put this in Kellen Moore's hands and let him be the messenger. Let him be the one that gets to be the hero in all of this. I think it's the right move by New Orleans. And I think that all of these decisions are the right decisions by the team, which, make no mistake about it, are happening up top too. Dennis Lauscha, Mickey Loomis, like they're all a part of these conversations too, and they're all a part of these decisions as well. But I think it's interesting that a lot of the information is coming from Kellen Moore, or it's just, the press release like we saw for the official announcement of the dates. But then look, like I think the other things that you look at is even the schedule release. Kellen Moore was a part of the schedule release video. How fun was that? You also see this idea of the Saints taking training camp back out to California. I think it's a concerted effort. Part of it is getting out of the heat, yes, but the other part of it is Kellen Moore has pushed so much this idea of being a team, not just playing football. And the idea of going out to California puts them in a position to where they're practicing together, they're living together, they're eating together, they are they're hanging out with one another, they're spending time with one another, they're going and doing recreational things together. Like there is a lot more to the value of taking training camp out of New Orleans, or not even taking training camp out of New Orleans, but taking training camp away from your team facility than just getting out of the heat in this situation. There is a camaraderie bonus that comes with it, but that doesn't have to be the entire offseason or entire length of training camp like the Saints had to do last year. So I do think that there is something sort of twofold in terms of the value that going out to California brings for this team. Look, those are the dates, 9 open dates. You can find more. I have a story for you over at louisianasports.net, neworleanssaints.com/training camps where you can get your tickets. Make sure you go and check that out. If you see me, say hi, as I always like to say. All right. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, I want to continue taking a look at some of the important pieces in this New Orleans Saints draft class. Next up, I want to take a look at Jonas Sanker and what his actual opportunities might be from his rookie year, and then trying to project out a few years ahead as well. So have a little fun there. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Know how the family's doing, know how you living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.